Disclaimer: this story explores mature emotional themes between adults. Viewer discretion is advised. I never imagined my quiet evenings would be interrupted by something so unexpected, something that would change how I saw everything. It all started on a late summer night, the kind where the air feels warm against your skin and the silence settles like a soft blanket around the house. I had just finished getting ready for bed, slipping into a silk robe that clung loosely to my frame. The lights were dimmed, the atmosphere calm, and I thought I was alone until I turned and saw him standing in the doorway. Ethan. He wasn't a child, not anymore. 24 now, with a strong jawline and eyes that always seemed to carry more than they let on. I had known him since he was 16, back when I married his father, Michael. Michael and I divorced last year, and though Ethan and I weren't technically related anymore, we hadn't really talked since the split. That distance was supposed to be a clean break, but fate, it seems, had other ideas. "I didn't know you were still up," I said, tying my robe a little tighter as I tried to recover from the shock of seeing him. He didn't answer right away, just stood there, looking at me with an unreadable expression. "I was just thinking," he said eventually, stepping into the room slowly. His voice was deeper than I remembered, gentler, but firmer, more self-assured. He had come over earlier that evening to drop off some old boxes he'd been storing. It was supposed to be a quick visit. Small talk, some awkward smiles, and he'd be gone. But somehow, we ended up reminiscing in the kitchen for hours about shared memories, holidays, burnt dinners, and the funny little things his dad used to do. It felt warm, familiar, like something lost was quietly finding its way back. I reached for a glass of water, trying to calm the flutter in my chest, when I heard him say it, softly, barely above a whisper, but clear enough that it echoed. "You look beautiful like this." The words stopped me cold. I turned toward him slowly, our eyes locking across the low glow of the hallway light. "What?" I asked, not because I didn't hear him, but because I needed to make sure I did. His gaze didn't waver. He stepped closer, his tone steady but laced with emotion. "I've always noticed you," he said, "even when I shouldn't have." My heart pounded. This couldn't be happening, could it? The boundaries we once had no longer existed, technically. But emotionally? This was dangerous territory. Still, the part of me that had felt unseen and unloved for so long, that part was listening. I didn't know what to say. There were too many emotions flooding my chest: shock, confusion, curiosity, and something else I wasn't ready to name. He stepped even closer, now just a foot away. "I don't expect anything," he said quietly. "I just needed you to know." I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could find the words, the front door suddenly creaked open. We both turned sharply, frozen. Someone else was in the house. And just like that, the moment shattered. My breath caught as the front door creaked open. For a moment, neither Ethan nor I moved. It felt like time was holding its breath with us. Then we heard footsteps, slow, uncertain, drawing closer. It was just the neighbor, dropping off a package mistakenly delivered earlier that day. But the spell had been broken. Ethan offered a tense smile, muttered something about heading out, and walked past me toward the hallway. I wanted to stop him. I wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, thoughts swirling. I hadn't expected to see him again, let alone hear those words. "You look beautiful like this." What did he mean by this? Vulnerable? Alone? Real? The next morning brought no peace. I found myself drifting through memories, Ethan as a teenager, quiet and observant, always more mature than others his age. When I married his father, he barely spoke to me for months. But over time, we bonded, slowly, respectfully. He'd open up in subtle ways, helping me in the kitchen, asking about my work, offering a rare but sincere smile when I was stressed. Michael never noticed. He was too busy, too distracted, too detached. Our marriage was more of a polite arrangement toward the end, a house filled with cold silences and maybe tomorrow promises. Ethan had been the only one who made the house feel alive. And when the divorce came, he disappeared without a word. I assumed he blamed me, but maybe I was wrong. I found myself thinking about the way he looked at me last night. Not like someone who was confused or acting on impulse, but like someone who had been holding something in for a long time. Something forbidden. Something aching to be known. I texted him late that evening. "You okay?" He replied almost instantly. "Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop 2 blocks from my place. It was quiet, dimly lit, and oddly comforting. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. I probably didn't look much better. "I didn't mean to make things weird," he said, nursing a coffee he hadn't touched. "But I can't pretend I don't feel something anymore." I stared at the steam rising from my cup, unsure how to respond. "You were always the one who saw me," he continued. "Even when my dad didn't. Even when I didn't see myself clearly." My throat tightened. "You're not a boy anymore, Ethan. And I'm not just some woman you used to live with." "I know that," he said, voice steady. "That's why this scares me." He reached across the table, gently brushing my hand with his fingers. The contact sent a shock through me, not of fear, but of recognition. Something long buried was stirring. I didn't pull away, but I didn't say yes either. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. And yet, here we were, hovering right at the edge. The days that followed were a blur of avoidance and overthinking. Ethan and I had not spoken since that night in the coffee shop. Not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't know what would happen if we did. I tried to bury myself in my work. I even accepted a dinner invitation from a colleague, Daniel, who had been gently pursuing me for months. He was kind, well-established, and the kind of man people said I should be with. It was a safe option. Sensible. But the entire night, I couldn't shake the thought of Ethan, his voice, his eyes, the way his hand felt when it brushed mine. I kept glancing at my phone, half expecting a message, half hoping there wouldn't be one. Then, 2 days later, Ethan showed up at my door again. I opened it, startled. He looked tense, his jaw tight, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his hoodie. "I know I said I wouldn't make things difficult," he said, "but I need to say this. Just once. Then I'll leave if you want me to." I didn't stop him. I stepped aside and let him in, heart pounding, nerves on fire. He walked straight to the living room and stood there like he was gathering courage. "I thought I could let it go," he began. "That it was just something in my head. But it's not. It's real. And I think you feel it too." I couldn't lie to him. Not anymore. But before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there stood Michael, Ethan's father, my ex-husband. He glanced past me and immediately noticed Ethan inside. His face tightened. "Didn't know you two were still in touch," he said flatly. I felt the blood drain from my face. Michael hadn't seen Ethan in months either. Their relationship had become strained after the divorce, mostly because Michael had never been the kind of father who tried. He was used to people staying quiet, used to people moving on. Ethan stepped into view. "I came to drop something off," he said coolly, avoiding his father's eyes. Michael narrowed his gaze. "Didn't realize you were that sentimental." I knew that tone. That condescending, dismissive dig. The kind he used to use on me. "You don't get to question what we do anymore," Ethan snapped, voice etched with a bitterness I hadn't heard before. Michael looked between us, and something in his eyes shifted. Suspicion. Realization. It hung in the air like a loaded weapon. "Well," he said slowly, "I guess I was right to divorce you." And just like that, he walked away, leaving a silence so sharp it cut straight through the room. I turned to Ethan. We both knew what Michael had seen, even if nothing had happened yet. This just got complicated. That night, I couldn't sleep. Michael's words echoed in my mind like a warning bell. He saw something. Maybe not everything, but enough to know something wasn't right. And knowing him, he wouldn't let it go. Not because he cared, but because it would bruise his ego to think someone he once controlled had found comfort somewhere else, especially with his own son. I texted Ethan the next morning. "We need to talk." In person. He showed up an hour later, quiet, cautious. His eyes searched mine the moment I opened the door, as if trying to read what he was walking into. Michael's not going to stay quiet, I said, cutting straight to the point. I know him. Ethan's jaw tightened. Let him talk. We've done nothing wrong. Not yet, I replied, softer now. But we both know where this is going. He stepped inside, brushing past me with a frustration that felt like electricity. You keep acting like this is a mistake. I'm not, I said, following him into the kitchen. But if people find out, this becomes something ugly. They won't care about timing or truth. All they'll see is what they want to see. He turned to face me. So what? We just pretend there's nothing here? Keep avoiding each other forever? I can't do that, not again. I looked at him, really looked. The strength in his eyes, the ache behind his words. He wasn't confused. He wasn't impulsive. He knew exactly what he was feeling, and so did I. But just as I opened my mouth to respond, there was another knock at the door. I froze. Ethan looked at me, already tense. I opened it. Michael again, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him. Her name was Dana, a mutual acquaintance. Gossip-hungry, unpredictable, and always eager to stir the pot. I thought we should talk, Michael said casually. Too casually? Clear the air. Ethan stepped into view behind me, and Dana's eyes flicked between us, narrowing like a knife. Michael smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I figured if there's nothing going on, you won't mind a little company. Ethan moved forward. This isn't your house. Michael's tone hardened. It used to be. And if I get even a whiff of something that could damage my name, I will protect it. My chest tightened. That was it, the threat, the control, the manipulation. He didn't care about us. He cared about perception. Power. I'm not scared of you anymore, I said, voice shaking but strong. Michael's expression flickered. Just for a second. A crack in the armor. Dana raised an eyebrow. This sounds juicy. Should I stay? Get out, Ethan snapped. Both of you. The room felt like it was on fire, truth pressing against every wall, about to break loose. As the door slammed shut behind them, I looked at Ethan. There were no more shadows to hide in. For a moment, there was peace. After slamming the door in Michael and Dana's faces, the silence that followed felt like a victory. Ethan and I stood in the kitchen, breathing heavily, the tension between us replaced with something else, something raw, resolute. We thought we'd face the worst. But we were wrong. The next day, everything changed. It started with a phone call. I was at work, half-focused, trying to get through the day when my boss pulled me into her office. She looked concerned. There's something you need to see, she said, turning her screen toward me. It was a social media post. An anonymous account had posted a photo of Ethan and me together. The angle was blurry, like it had been taken from across the street through a window. The caption read, "Stepmom gets cozy with her ex's son." Should we be concerned? My stomach dropped. I recognized the photo. It had been taken the night we met at the coffee shop. The soft lighting, the closeness, the way his hand grazed mine, it all looked far more intimate than we intended. And to anyone on the outside, it told a very different story. They're asking questions, my boss said gently. It's not just gossip, it's circulating fast. I need to know if there's any truth to it. I opened my mouth but couldn't speak. How could I explain something I hadn't even figured out myself? I left work early, shaking. I called Ethan as soon as I got in the car. He answered on the first ring. They're watching us, I said. Someone followed us that night. I know, he said quietly. I saw Dana outside the coffee shop. She must have taken the photo. My blood ran cold. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't think she'd actually do something with it, he said. But I should have known. Michael probably put her up to it. And then, as if the universe was listening, another call came in, this time from Michael. I hope you enjoyed your little secret, his voice sneered through the voicemail. Because now everyone knows. Let's see how long your reputation lasts. I stood in the middle of the parking lot, phone to my ear, heartbeat pounding. He had orchestrated all of it, used Dana, weaponized the past, twisted everything to destroy us. And it was working. When I got home, Ethan was already there, pacing the living room like a caged animal. He's ruining your life to punish me. No, I said, stepping forward. He's doing it because he never believed I could be more than what he made me. We stood there, both of us exhausted, cornered. Everything was unraveling. But then Ethan paused. There's something I haven't told you. I stared at him, bracing for impact. I didn't just show up that night because I missed you, he said. I came back because I found something. Something my father was hiding. About you. Ethan's words echoed in the quiet of our home, heavy and irreversible. I found something my father was hiding. About you. I felt like the floor beneath me had shifted. What are you talking about? He walked to the bookshelf, pulled a folder from beneath a stack of old files, and handed it to me. Inside were copies of legal documents, my old employment contracts, financial agreements, and letters I thought had been lost years ago. Michael had access to these? I asked, scanning through them in disbelief. More than access, Ethan said. He was tracking you. Your job applications, your bank activity, everything. Even after the divorce. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just possessiveness. It was surveillance. Control. He kept tabs on you to make sure you couldn't build a life without him, Ethan added. And when I started asking questions, he turned on me too. I sat down, trembling, the weight of it all finally breaking through. This wasn't just about a photo or rumors. This was about power. About a man who couldn't stand the idea of losing control over either of us. And now? I asked, my voice barely audible. Ethan stepped forward. Now we expose him. We spent the night gathering everything, emails, documents, messages Dana had sent Ethan by mistake. We didn't just have proof of manipulation. We had evidence of harassment, even fraud. The next morning, I went to the office, not to hide, but to speak. I told my boss everything, laid it bare with painful honesty. The risk was high, but so was the cost of silence. To my surprise, she believed me, supported me. Later that day, we met Michael at a public cafe. Neutral ground. Controlled. He arrived, smug as ever, expecting silence or surrender. Instead, I slid the folder across the table. You've been following me, I said calmly. You've invaded my life. But that ends now. He opened the folder and froze. You could have just walked away, Ethan added. But you chose to destroy. Michael's face hardened, but he knew. This wasn't just emotional anymore. It was legal. Traceable. I could ruin you, he hissed. No, I said. You already tried. And we're still standing. He left, quietly and quickly, for once stripped of all control. Back home, Ethan and I sat in the silence, not victorious, but relieved. We'll still face judgment, I said. From people who don't know. I don't care anymore, he replied. Let them talk. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And then, in the stillness of the moment, he reached for my hand, not in hesitation, but in certainty. I smiled for the first time in days. But just as peace settled in, my phone buzzed. A message. From Dana. For words. You should check this. The message from Dana sat on my phone like a silent threat. You should check this. Ethan and I exchanged a glance. After everything we'd just endured, the last thing we needed was another twist. But ignoring it would only give her more power. So I opened it. It was a video, grainy, time-stamped, and clearly recorded without permission. It showed Michael in his office, talking to someone on a call. What he said changed everything. Just make it look like she used the company's money. I don't care how. She'll fold if she thinks her job's on the line. I sat back, stunned. He had planned to destroy me professionally. Not just with rumors, but with fabricated evidence. Dana followed up with a second message. I thought you deserved to know. I'm done helping him. For the first time, Michael's whole scheme was undeniable, and Dana, perhaps guilt-ridden or finally fed up, had delivered the final piece. With that, we had everything we needed. I reported it to my workplace immediately, and with the mounting evidence, they launched an internal investigation, not on me, but on Michael. Even though he no longer worked there, his connections and manipulations had reached far. HR took it seriously. Legal action began soon after. As for Ethan and me, we finally stopped looking over our shoulders. We didn't jump into anything. We took our time, let the chaos settle, and figured out what we really wanted, without fear, guilt, or pressure. A year later, we moved in together. It wasn't perfect. There were whispers, moments of doubt, awkward glances from people who didn't understand. But the truth was simple. We had saved each other. He reminded me what it meant to be seen, really seen. And I helped him break free of his father's toxic shadow. Michael? He eventually vanished from our lives. The investigation caught up with him, and once people saw the full picture, his lies, manipulation, threats, he lost the influence he once held so tightly. And Dana? She sent one last message a few months later. A quiet apology. I didn't respond, but I appreciated it all the same. Looking back, the whole story still feels unreal. Like we walked through a storm and somehow made it out together. But the lesson stayed with me. Sometimes the people who seem off limits are exactly the ones who show up when everyone else turns away. And sometimes, choosing your own happiness means letting go of what's acceptable and holding on to what's real. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Let us know in the comments. We love reading your thoughts.